Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking closely at a really powerful personal account. It was shared by one of you, and it's titled, Dad Called Me a Failure Who Would Never Succeed, So I Gave Them the Ultimate Surprise.
Yeah, and this is more than just a story, isn't it? At its core, it's really an examination of how we deal with those deeply critical voices, the ones in
Yep.
our lives, and, what it takes to actually define our own success.
Exactly. We're diving into this journey, Ellie's journey, as she sort of navigates her father's constant criticism. And, wow, she carves out her own path, surprising him in the end.
And maybe surprising herself, too.
Perhaps more importantly, yes. Our mission here isn't just, a feel-good story. We really want to unpack what was driving Ellie. What was the psychological weight of those negative words?
hmm
And what were those crucial turning points that led her to redefine success? For you, the learner, listening in, this exploration offers, I think, some real insights into resilience, into how self-belief grows, especially when you're facing adversity.
And those really tricky family dynamics, the expectations.
Right, all vital stuff for understanding your own motivations and, frankly, tackling the challenges you might be facing right now.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Ellie's story, it paints this picture of her father.
Mm.
His standards just seemed impossible to reach, always out of reach.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like the big things. It was this constant stream of dissatisfaction, grades, hobbies, even her friends.
It sounds exhausting, just this ongoing feeling of never being quite good enough.
Exactly. And that kind of consistent negative feedback,
Mm.
especially coming from a parent, well, it's profound, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It can really shape how you see yourself, what you think you're capable of deep down.
And it really crystallizes with that science test incident. She was 15.
Right.
Ellie was genuinely thrilled, actually excited about getting a B plus, which is a good grade.
It's a perfectly good grade.
But her father's response, it was just so cold. A, B plus A. You call that good. You'll never succeed in life if you keep settling for mediocrity.
Oof, that's wow. It's almost breathtakingly negative.
It is. And what's fascinating, or maybe disturbing, is how this, seemingly small incident becomes a real flashpoint.
It wasn't just about the grade then.
No, not at all. It felt like a judgment on her entire future,
Hmm.
her potential. It really speaks to how these pronouncements, especially from parents, can just land with such incredible force.
And shape a young person's self-perception, boom, just like that.
Precisely. And then you add the comparisons on top of that constant refrain, why can't you be like your cousin Sarah? She's already got her life figured out, and you're still here messing around.
Ah, the comparison trap. That stuff cuts so deep because it's not just attacking what you do, your achievements.
It attacks who you are, your identity. It suggests you're inherently, I don't know, less valuable, less capable than someone else.
Yeah, it's one thing to critique an action, like you could study harder, but comparing you unfavorably to another person, that just undermines your whole sense of self-worth.
Plants that seed of inadequacy.
Mm.
And it can be so hard to shake off later.
So, understandably, this constant barrage, it led Ellie to kind of withdraw, right, to avoid that critical gaze.
Yes. But what's really interesting here is that it also sparks something else. She calls it a fire, this drive to prove him wrong.
Right. Which highlights this fascinating aspect of human psychology, doesn't it? How adversity, while it's damaging, can sometimes become this powerful motivator. Painful, but powerful.
It's like this psychological pushback, a refusal, deep down, to be defined solely by someone else's negative view.
But there's likely a cost to that, isn't there? That kind of externally driven motivation.
Oh, absolutely. While that fire can definitely drive achievement, it often exists alongside this undercurrent of anxiety,
Huh.
a persistent need for external validation, even if you're outwardly rejecting it.
And maybe difficulty celebrating your own successes without thinking about, well, what would he think?
Exactly. That comparative element is still there.
So, okay, after graduation, Ellie has this really important moment, a realization. She understands, okay, I need to chart my own course now, separate from my father's expectations.
Yes, and she finds fulfillment, genuine fulfillment, in a marketing role. Something she actually enjoys creating content, strategizing, which is probably a stark contrast to the, high-powered corporate job her father might have envisioned.
Mm-hmm. This feels like a crucial turning point, a shift towards what? Intrinsic motivation,
Yeah.
doing something because you love it, not just for the approval.
Exactly. Finding work that aligns with her passions, it gives her this sense of competence, of purpose, that's entirely her own, separate from him.
Yet, even as she's finding this happiness, this satisfaction in her work, that internalized voice of her father's disapproval, it's still there. It lingers, especially when she actually has to face him.
It really underscores how deeply those early criticisms can get ingrained, doesn't it? It's almost like a default setting in her mind.
Like the brain's wired to expect that critical response.
Yeah, those early repeated messages can create really strong neural associations.
Mhm.
It makes it difficult to fully embrace her own positive experiences without that shadow of doubt constantly creeping in.
Okay, so then comes this other pivotal moment. She pours all her energy into a specific project, right? And it gets recognized, like major industry magazine recognition.
Yeah, a big deal in her field. And for a moment, she allows herself to hope. Maybe this time, he'll see it. Maybe she'll get his approval.
But his response,
It's just crushing.
it is,
That's cute, Ellie, but don't get too comfortable. You're still not where you need to be.
wow, it's like a slap in the face. All that hope just deflated instantly.
And this persistent dismissal, I mean, even when faced with clear evidence of her talent, her hard work, it acts as a catalyst. It seems to
Yeah.
finally truly sever that deep-seated need for his validation.
It's like a painful but maybe ultimately liberating realization that his approval might just always be out of reach no matter what she does.
Exactly. And it's right there, in that moment of profound disappointment, that she makes a conscious decision. I don't need his approval to define my worth.
And that, I think, is the core aha moment. For anyone listening who's ever sought validation from a critical figure, that realization is huge.
It really is. This shift, moving from external validation seeking to internal validation building, it's fundamental. It's how you build true self-esteem, true resilience.
Because when your sense of worth, your definition of success, comes from within.
It's far less vulnerable. It can't be shaken as easily by the fluctuating opinions of others.
So from that point, her focus shifts. Her goals become about her aspirations, not about trying to meet his impossible standards.
Right. And she starts taking risks, stepping outside her comfort zone. It's as if she's finally given herself permission to pursue what truly matters to her.
And this newfound autonomy, it must unleash a really powerful kind of motivation.
Absolutely. When our actions are driven by our own values, our own
Yeah.
desires, we're just much more likely to persevere through the tough spots and find a deeper sense of fulfillment in what we achieve.
She talks about this incredible sense of freedom, like a weight has been lifted.
Mm-hmm.
And her motivation evolves too, right? Initially, maybe it was partly about proving him wrong.
Which is understandable.
But then it transitions. It becomes more about wanting to show him, almost as a way of solidifying her own internal shift. Like, see? This is me now.
That's a very natural progression, I think. Even when we achieve that internal validation, there can still be this lingering desire for recognition, especially from those whose opinions once held so much weight. It's part of redefining those relationships and our place within them.
So she decides to channel this energy. She creates her own digital marketing agency.
Yep, focusing on small businesses, which sounds like a perfect intersection of her skills and her passion.
And we hear about the initial hurdles, the small loan, juggling freelancers, the long hours, the usual startup grind.
Right, the challenges are real.
But her overwhelming feeling is one of empowerment. She says, but I loved it. For the first time, I felt like I was in control of my destiny.
And that sense of agency, of directly influencing her own outcomes, that's such a powerful antidote, especially to the feeling of helplessness that can come from constant criticism.
So the challenges of being an entrepreneur become manageable.
More than manageable, they're fueled by this intrinsic drive, this sense of ownership. It's her thing.
And the agency thrives. Clients are happy, they refer others. She starts achieving the very success her father basically said was impossible for her.
But crucially, it's on her terms this time.
Right. And yet, there's still this pull, this desire to have her family, especially her dad, really see it, witness it, which leads to the planned family dinner.
This planned reveal, it really highlights the enduring impact of those early experiences, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Even with all this personal achievement, significant achievement, there's still a part of her that seeks acknowledgement from the person who was so critical.
Maybe a desire for reconciliation
Yeah.
or just acknowledgement.
Something like that, a need for the narrative to shift in his eyes, too.
So the scene at the dinner table,
Mm.
you can almost feel the tension, the familiar dynamics, her father holding court at the head of the table.
The mother watching carefully, the siblings maybe sensing something's different about Ellie.
And then Ellie shares her news. Calmly, confidently. Well, actually, she says, I've started my own company. It's a digital marketing agency.
And we focus on helping small businesses grow their online presence. Just lays it out there.
And the reaction, initial silence.
Yeah, a beat of silence, and then this faint flicker of surprise on her father's face,
Mm-hmm.
followed by his characteristically reserved comment. That's impressive.
But then,
But then, immediately tempered with skepticism. He couldn't quite help himself.
of course, it underscores how deeply ingrained those critical patterns are in him. It takes overwhelming evidence just to get a slight positive response.
And even then, it's quickly followed by his default setting.
Doubt. But her mother's reaction is different.
Yes, her mother is clearly proud, which provides this vital counterpoint in the moment.
And even though the father's initial response isn't, the overwhelming praise she might have craved years ago, Ellie recognizes it as a shift.
A small shift, but a shift nonetheless. She's no longer being completely dismissed or ignored.
That small acknowledgement, however grudging it might be, it represents a crack. A crack in that wall of disapproval he'd built.
It signals that her success is becoming undeniable, even to him.
But the story doesn't peak there, does it? Because this is the ultimate surprise.
Right. Ellie doesn't stop. She keeps dedicating herself to her business, building it, accumulating more and more undeniable proof of her capabilities.
And then comes the real game changer, landing a major deal.
A huge deal with a globally recognized international brand.
Okay, now that operates on a different level entirely.
Totally. It's not just about personal satisfaction anymore. This is a clear, objective marker of significant achievement, the kind that's really, really difficult to ignore or downplay.
So she arranges another family meeting, shares this news, calmly, confidently, again.
And this time, she says, something really has shifted. She sees it in her father's eyes. She sees respect.
Wow. And she lays out the proof, the financials.
Yep. Presents the 5-year financial projections, the secured funding for expansion, the whole package. Undeniable proof.
And
finally, those words, the ones she probably thought she'd never hear. He says, I was wrong about you, Ellie. You've done something incredible here. I can't deny it.
that must have been incredibly powerful, given their whole history.
Immensely powerful. It represents such a significant shift in his perception. A validation that, I imagine, carried enormous emotional weight for Ellie, even with all the internal validation she'd already built for herself.
And the story concludes with this understanding, doesn't it? That the ultimate surprise, in the end, wasn't just about proving her father wrong.
No. It was really about Ellie realizing her own resilience, her own strength, her power to shape her own life, completely independent of his limiting beliefs about her.
It really highlights the profound impact of our internal narrative, doesn't it? Versus the external criticisms we might face.
Absolutely. While that external validation might be sought, and sometimes achieved, true strength, lasting strength, lies in recognizing and believing in your own capabilities, your own worth.
So, for you, the learner listening to this, maybe take a moment to consider the voices that have influenced your own path. Have you ever felt that weight, the weight of someone else's low expectation?
Or even just their specific definition of what success should look like for you.
Yeah. And what steps can you take, maybe starting today, to define your own version of success, to trust your inner compass, even when you're faced with doubt from others?
Ellie's journey really leaves us with this thought, I think. If external approval can be so conditional, so unreliable, sometimes withheld despite our best efforts, what does it truly mean to approve of yourself? Unconditionally.
Regardless of others' opinions.
Exactly. Perhaps that internal acceptance, that self-approval, is the most powerful surprise of all. And maybe that's the true foundation for lasting fulfillment.